The Steam Dragon, A Christmas Tale, written by Peter Richard Adams. A long way from here and the world you know, past rivers and mountains and oceans, there is a land where the snow is always falling. It is a place where few people visit and fewer people live. Even the trees are scared to grow here. Those that do group together, shuddering in the cold wind. Yet, once a year, in December, there is a sign of life. Shh. Can you hear it? In the distance, getting closer. Here it comes, thundering out of a mountain tunnel and out across the vast snow-covered plain. The Lord Phil, a mighty steam train, painted in dark green and black, click-clack, click-clacks along the rails. Behind it are 100 freight wagons loaded with presents from the toy workshops of the elves, heading to Santa's house where they can be loaded into his sleigh on Christmas Eve. It is a very precious cargo. It was Christmas. All over the world, families got together, decorations were hung and carols sung. Lights twinkled in trees and a single star shone brightly in the night sky. Everywhere there was joy. Everywhere, that is, except in the land where the snow is always falling. There, in a cave, two creatures huddled by a fire and made their own Christmas plans. Plans of a much more sinister sort. A peculiar pair, an elephant and a bear. In the firelight, they stared at a map of the train line.
"Do you know what you have to do?"
asked the elephant.
"I know what I have to do,"
replied the bear. And with that, they stood up and began to put on their hats and coats. You know when you see an elephant and a bear that they are up to no good. The first giveaway is where they are. An elephant has no place being in the land where the snow is always falling, and a bear should have no business with an elephant. However, together they made a curiously cunning combination. Together the two had been responsible for great crimes throughout the world. From the Sahara Desert to the rainforests of Brazil, they had robbed and stolen and plundered, and now they were here, putting their latest plan into action.
"Should we take the dragon?"
asked the bear.
"Leave him,"
said the elephant. And together they left the cave and headed out into the snow and wind. Locked inside a small cage, a pair of sad eyes watched them leave. The eyes belonged to a dragon called Rafferty, and they were sad for two reasons. The first reason was because he wasn't like the other dragons that lived in the land where the snow is always falling. The other dragons were big, yet Rafferty was small. The other dragons were scary, yet Rafferty was a squeaker. The other dragons could fly, yet Rafferty could only snuffle along the ground as his tiny wings wiggled behind him. The second reason he was sad was because the elephant and the bear had captured him. One moment he'd been happily snuffling in the snow for Gruber roots. The next he was being kept in a cage and they forced him to keep their fire burning with his flamy breath. But Rafferty was also a smart little dragon. He had been patient. He had listened. He had learned. He knew what they were up to. The elephant and the bear were going to rob the Lord Phil, the most important train in the entire world. They were going to steal the presents meant for all the children on Christmas Eve. Bravely, with a puff of his fiery breath, he melted the lock from his little cage and headed to the mouth of the cave. In the distance, he saw the elephant and the bear as they headed into the snowy storm. Giving himself one last warming puff of flame, he snuffled after them.
I will stop you,
he said. Can you hear that sound? It's getting closer. The Lord Phil is chuffing and puffing, pulling its heavy freight. Here it comes now, past a mighty frozen lake, over a bridge across a racing river, round the bend of a mighty mountain, and down, down, down into a deep ravine. The very ravine in which the elephant and bear now stand, preparing to put their sinister scheme into action. The elephant and the bear stood at the bottom of the ravine and stared up at the rocky cliffs above them.
You know what you have to do?
Said the elephant.
I know what I have to do,
replied the bear, and the elephant's tremendous trunk went, and the bear's grisly growl went, and the sound they made grew and grew, swirling in the air. It echoed. It boomed. And above them, the snow began to wobble and quiver and shake. It started small, just some snow falling from a quaking tree. But soon that snow had rolled into a ball, which rolled into a bigger ball, and then a bigger and bigger ball, until it was so big that it was a mighty avalanche. An avalanche that came down, 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 falling from the edge of the cliff and crashed into the valley below.
We have done what we had to do,
said the elephant.
We have done what we had to do,
agreed the bear. The train track was covered by a thick, deep mountain of snow. Snow so thick and deep that not even the mighty Lord Phil would be able to break through. High above this scene, having scrambled up a tree, Rafferty the dragon watched. From this high up, so high he could almost touch the sky, amongst the swirling winds and blistering cold, he saw in the distance the Lord Phil powering down the track and heading toward the turn of the rails into the ravine. Rafferty knew that not even the powerful Lord Phil was strong enough to break through the mountain of snow. He knew that the train would crash. And he knew that diabolical duo, the elephant and the bear, would steal all the Christmas presents. But what could Rafferty do? He was so small. The mountain of snow was so big, and it was so far away. He could never snuffle there in time. But he had to do something. He had already been brave, but now it was time to be even braver. On and on came the Lord Phil. The clicks clicked and the clacks clacked. The avalanche waited. The whistle blew. The elephant and the bear waited. Would this be the end for Christmas? There was nothing for it. If Rafferty was going to have any chance of warning the Lord Phil, he was going to have to get down into the ravine. But getting down into the ravine meant that he would have to jump. Jumping was a very scary thing to do when you were only used to snuffling along the ground with your tiny wings wiggling behind you. Nervously, Rafferty crept out along the branch of the tree until he was over the edge of the ravine. With a gulpy gulp and eyes closed, he took a deep breath and stepped off. As he fell and fell, he kept his eyes tightly closed. The wind rushed past his flapping ears. The ground got ever closer. Rafferty braced himself and waited for the almighty thump that would come when he hit the ground. He hoped it wouldn't hurt. He waited and waited. He fell and fell. And then, very slowly, he realized that he was falling upwards. First, he opened one eye. Then he opened the other. He couldn't believe it. He wasn't falling. He was flying. Flying through the air. He was swooping and he was soaring. There was no time to waste. Flapping his wings behind him, Rafferty turned his attention toward the avalanche covering the train line.
Roar!
He roared, breathing fire from his mouth and melting the mountain of snow below him. It was just in time. At that very moment, the Lord Phil came thundering round the bend. Rather than crashing into a wall of snow, instead it sloshed through puddles of sloppy slush. The Lord Phil continued on its way on towards Santa's house. The presents it carried would make their rendezvous. Christmas was saved.
Do you know what you have to do?
Asked the elephant.
I know what I have to do,
Replied the bear. And with that, they ran away as fast as their feet could carry them. In the sky, Rafferty swooped and soared. He watched as the Lord Phil powered its way into the distance. He also watched as the elephant and the bear ran away. For a moment, he considered chasing them. They had been very naughty. But it was Christmas, and if you are not able to forgive at Christmas, then you would never forgive at all.
Happy Christmas, Elephant and Bear,
said Rafferty. A long way from here and the world you know, past rivers and mountains and oceans where no one dare sail, there is a land where the snow is always falling. Shh. Can you hear it? There, in the distance. Getting closer. Here it comes, coming out of the pine forest and out across the vast snow-covered plain. It is a steam train, and its name is the Lord Phil. Sat on top and leaning against its chimney sits Rafferty the steam dragon. Riding the rails every December, he keeps a watchful eye, always on hand to clear the snow with his flamy breath.
Happy Christmas, everybody. The end.